Our theme for the year 2020 is Beyond 2020 Spiritual Vision. And the idea is for us to look beyond the ordinary. Don't settle for the ordinary. Don't accept the average for your life. Try instead to see life in terms of possibilities that have not yet been realized in your life, not yet known to you. So we started last week talking about new and personal ideas about divinity, the divine. The divine as a love that wants your complete freedom. We were talking about the love of God being a persistent, everywhere present, creative power that you and I can learn to use more mindfully to create more harmony in life for ourselves and for others, for all sentient beings, for those who are suffering, and for those who are struggling, and even for those who are happy. Now, this week, we're talking about the other side of it. We're talking about the love we might have for divinity. I learned a wonderful idea in Science of Mind when I started studying it, this idea of divinity being everywhere present. That was new for me. And as I explored that, I had to accept that that meant I had to include me and you. Well, that was tricky. I had to come to terms with the idea that there is that within you and that within me that is worthy of profound respect, awe, even love, veneration, devotion. And then through my studies of Science of Mind, I started to understand that when I love, my loving is one of the ways I worship this everywhere present God that I had started to meet again, anew, in a new way. You know, things happen when a person begins to explore this idea of divinity as everywhere present. Things change, it will change you. And men and women, seekers all over the world, all over the ages, have expressed this in poetry, because poetry can say things that words alone cannot express. Like the poet Rumi, who wrote this: all day I think about it, then at night I say it. Where did I come from? And what am I supposed to be doing? I have no idea. My soul is from elsewhere, I'm sure of that. And I intend to end up there. This drunkenness began in some other tavern. When I get back around to that place, I'll be completely sober. Meanwhile, I'm like a bird from another continent sitting in this aviary. The day is coming when I fly off. But who is it now in my ear who hears my voice? Who says words with my mouth? Who looks with my eyes? What is the soul? I cannot stop asking. If I could taste one sip of an answer, I would break out of this prison for drunks. I didn't come here of my own accord, and I can't leave that way. Whoever brought me here will have to take me home. This poetry, I never know what I'm going to say. I don't plan it. When I'm outside of the saying of it, I get very quiet and rarely speak. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Oh, the language of poetry. It can help us connect with this idea that there is something going on here. Back of everything, there is a something. Poetry, like prayer, can help redirect our thoughts from the dust and the grime of the journey, all the things we deal with in life, redirect it to this respect for the mystery of being. It wasn't so for me in my early religious upbringing. In my early religious upbringing, I was taught that I was a worthless sinner. I was. Born broken. And with a tendency toward failure. Yeah. And I was taught that I had to work very hard to be persistently sorry for disappointing the divine. And I had to learn to apologize regularly for my natural shortcomings. And then in Science of Mind, I learned something different. I learned that I carry a spark of divinity in me. And that you carry a spark of divinity in you. A spark that is worthy of respect, awe, love. No matter how I or you or anyone shows up. Recently, I was watching a TV interview with Catherine Jurek, one of our members who is helping with the feeding of the unsheltered on the Joe Rodota Trail, and the TV reporters were asking her about that. You know, because some people wrestle with the question, does everyone deserve to be helped? You know, I don't remember her exact words in response, but it did remind me of what I learned in Science of Mind. And it goes something like this. When you start to fall in love with divinity as something that is everywhere present, then the conversation becomes less about deserving and more about loving and helping and respecting and caring. You see, I came to understand I am not qualified to judge people's worthiness. However, I have been given the ability to love and help. And again, to me, when I'm loving, I'm worshiping. All those words from Rumi. Who is it now in my ear who hears my voice? Who says words with my mouth? Who looks out with my eyes? And now I can add, and who helps with my hands? Who loves through my heart? Who gives through my gifts? Who creates through my imagination? It's that spark. The eternal part of me and you, that thing from which we can never escape, can never be separated from. And I want to be devoted to that more and more and more. The psalmist in Judaism expressed it like this. Whither shall I go from your spirit? Or whither shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend up to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost part of the sea, even there shall your hand lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say the darkness is covering me, even so, the darkness cannot hide me from you. But the night shines as the day, for the darkness and the light are both alike to you. You hold my reins. You touched me in my mother's womb. And I will praise you, for I am wonderfully made. How marvelous are your works. And that my soul knows right well. And our society, our culture, makes it kind of challenging to stay in the poetry, to stay in love with the divine, with life. You know, because society is constantly pointing to the temporary things of life and saying, this is what is important. Worship that. Own this. Have that. Be like this. Experience that. And there's this underlying urgent warning before it's too late, before it runs out, before the price goes up, before you're too old. Get it, hold it, protect it, have it. It can be so stressful. And it constantly turns our attention outward for our peace and happiness and meaning and worthiness. And then in Science of Mind class, I learned a new approach, something different. To see things clearly for what they are. Beautiful, fragile, imperfect things of creation. And instead of worshiping them, to instead adore and worship the power from which they came. Our own founder, Dr. Holmes, in his own poetic way, wrote about the divine like this. Mighty Spirit, Eternal One, Infinite Good, Maker of all things and Keeper of my life, you are all there is. Infinite Presence, the One in whom all life lives, joy supreme that floods all there is with gladness, I adore you. Eternal peace, I feel your calm. You who inhabit eternity and dwell within all creation, you who lives through all things and in all people, hear my prayer. I would enter into your gates with joy and live at peace in your house. I would find a resting place in you and live from your presence. So guide me into your ways, and from your wisdom, teach me the ways of truth. Help me to follow your guidance and not pursue the paths of my own counsel. Eternal blessed presence, illumine my mind and command my will, refresh my soul and renew my life. For surely as deep cries out to deep, so my thoughts cry out to you, and you answer, and I'm renewed and refreshed, and my whole being responds to your love, and I am complete in you. All my ways are guarded and guided, and I shall live with you eternally. O lover of my soul and keeper of my spirit, we cannot be separated, for we are one. And so your wisdom guides me, and your presence dwells within me, and your love keeps me, and your life envelops me now and forever. I rest in you. Oh, wouldn't it be nice to have that on a piece of paper? You know the routine. If you're visiting with us, this is how I bribe people to come and say hello to me after the service. But these words, these poetic, prayerful words, lover of my soul, Lord, they sound like separation. They sound like a presence separate and out there, but they're not. I keep in mind that these authors are talking about something that is eternally present everywhere in me, in you, everywhere. Devotional. That's what these prayers are, devotions. You know, devotion is a form of love, a special kind of focused love, a selfless love. And selfless means a kind of love that needs no reward. A respectful affection that is given without strings attached. You know, when we begin to connect with this idea of divinity as everywhere present, you know what happens? We begin to start a tender love affair with the world, just as it is, and just as it is not. Because now we begin to see everything and everyone as an expression of the divine. And we begin to love that. And in the Hindu world, that is sometimes called bhakti yoga, or the discipline of devotion. And even in Hinduism, it's acknowledged that it's easier to be devoted to something you can see and touch than it is to be devoted to something that is invisible, like the divine. So we say, why not practicing then loving what you can see? Understanding that back of everything seen is that which cannot be seen. O thou who dost inhabit all eternity and all creation and lives through all people. In Hinduism, some forms, we are encouraged to do daily acts of devotion, whether that is through art or acts of compassion or worship. And the teaching is that in these acts, the individual is meeting the divine. The practice is called darshan, which means meeting God. Darshan is that moment when the devotee, you or me, the one practicing, is in communion with the divine through the act of opening our hearts to loving no matter what it is that we are doing. So in that way of thinking, darshan can be practiced anywhere, at home, in your morning prayers, or visiting a museum and being mind opened by some exquisite art, or in a church or a mosque or a temple or a center during a moment of inspiration or silence, or being in the presence of somebody who is all prayed up, or being in the presence of someone who is suffering and loving them just the way that they are. Or it could be an act of mindfulness at work or at play, or it could be caring for a child or a parent, or it could be washing a floor, or it could be helping a stranger. See, what is needed for an act to become an act of devotion is to see beyond the act, through it, clearly, to the holiness back of it, to look past appearances, no matter their form, and to stay in love. I've seen devotion in action. You may have too. I've seen it in people caring for an ailing parent. I've seen it in parents caring for an ailing child. I've seen it in people caring for hurt and abandoned animals. I've seen it in people building a school in a distant continent where there are no resources. I've seen it in people digging wells in remote areas that are short in the resource of water. And in each one of these cases, at the heart of it, in the heart of this kind of devotion, is something that we have. Generosity of spirit. So it can include giving your time or giving your energy or giving your resources. It can sometimes mean giving the best energy we have to help another person. And sometimes it's just in the simple form of loving kindness. And sometimes the motive is to bring relief to suffering or discomfort. And after a while, there are no motives left. It just becomes the way of living. That moment when we start to understand there is a deeper place to live from. When I see clearly that there is something in you that is eternal and worthy of reverence, it's going to change me. Again, the practice of devotion can be as simple as setting a time every day to read a spiritual reading, or by silently repeating the name of God like we did this morning. Well, we sang it. Or by studying the example of great spiritual teachers like we do in our classes. or by singing songs of praise like we might do with Karen Drucker at that event coming up at the end of January. Importantly, however, the devotion ought not to stop when the practice stops. That's why practice is so powerful. When I or you make a regular thing of loving as a practice, then the effects of that practice seep into the ordinary, normal activities of my life. Then love stays with me. When I go to the supermarket, when I'm dealing with disappointment, when I face something I can't control, when I encounter something I don't understand. When I was researching the Bhagavad Gita to write this book for beginners on the Bhagavad Gita, I wrote about it comparing Jesus and Krishna, saying, Jesus expressed this by warning his people that whoever claims to love God yet hates a sister or brother is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. Lord Krishna sets forth an equally high-minded goal for the seeker, describing the perfect person as one who is incapable of ill will, who returns love for hatred, is full of mercy, and who has placed God firmly in their heart. Hindu or Christian, whether these lofty ideals seem unattainable to a seeker or not, they remain important ideas to aspire to and give us something to aim for that could very well result in a life that is more and more and more in tune with love. Now, next week, we're going to talk about the important role faith plays in staying in love. I invite you to breathe in with me and exhale into a moment of quiet as you close your eyes and let your thoughts settle on your natural, inherent ability to love. I recognize that there is one presence in and through all creation, the living Spirit Almighty, that which causes creation to be, the power that fuels all being. And I identify myself with it and all those people listening to my voice, recognizing that our lives are lived from the one eternal life. So I realize and accept that the love of the divine expresses itself through my loving, that its creativity expresses itself through my imagination. And I rededicate myself to being an instrument for its good in the world. I let myself be guided intuitively from within, trusting that this presence is persistently in me, whatever I'm doing and wherever I'm going. And I let myself soften into an attitude of devotion. I become, in this moment through this prayer, again, a spiritual detective, looking out at creation, seeking the evidence of the unseen in everything that appears before me. And I give thanks for this attitude renewal, filled up with innocent excitement for how it will show up on my path. And I do release this word of prayer into the action of the law of mind. That's a reminder for me to hold it lightly, to not coerce, force, or control, but to trust the flow of life. And together we say, and so it is.